Hi, this is Pavlos. I am from Greece.
Hey Chris, Steve here.
Hello Chris, this is Lukas from Vienna, Austria.
Hey Chris, this is Dave Recht in California.
And this is Chris Marquardt bringing you today's tips from the top floor with a question on broken links, printing your photos, the Marquardt International Pinhole lens element in groups, and an SD card tester for Windows. Support for today's show comes from Shutterstock. You might know of Shutterstock as a home to royalty-free photos, but they offer much more. Kickstart your next interactive project with video clips or music tracks from their collection. All of your creative needs served to you in one place. Take advantage today of a 20% discount the company is offering for a limited time at shutterstock.com/topfloor. That's shutterstock.com/topfloor. This is Tips from the Top Floor, episode 781 for Thursday, June the 29th, 2017.
Tips from the top floor, tips from the top, alright, from the top floor.
Hey, hello, welcome. It's Chris Marquardt. You're listening to Tips from the Top Floor, the longest running photography show on the planet, coming to you from the Viewfinder Villa right outside the gates of Hanover in Germany. And I skipped a week. Well, my apologies. I know a few of you actually sent me emails asking if everything was okay. Yes, everything's fine. I was just juggling stuff. Yeah. Anyway, quick follow-up to episode 780. I talked about backing up to the Amazon cloud using ARQ, which has been my go-to solution for a while. And literally, the day after I recorded the episode, Amazon sent me an email telling me, and lots of you guys too, as far as I've heard, unlimited storage plans will be cancelled. I mean, couldn't they have waited for a day? Sent it a day earlier? Or waited for another few days so it would be closer to an episode? Because I've been sitting on this for 2 weeks now. Anyway, I'm kind of lucky. My plan here will continue through the end of October. So I do have some time to take care of things, but that unlimited Amazon Cloud Drive really was the easiest and cheapest way to get the cloud backup for me. Well, I know a lot of you use this kind of a solution too. Maybe exactly the same solution if you're on a Mac, ARQ, and Amazon Cloud. So let me just walk you through how to deal with this, because I think it might be of value to those of you who have the same setup. First, you want to check when your subscription is up, and you can do this on the Cloud Drive management page, and that will give you a date so you know by when you have to do something. And again, mine ends in October, so I have a bit more time to deal with it. And then second, there is a setting in the ARC settings for your backups, like for that specific backup setup, where you can set a budget. And that's a way to limit the total size of your backups. And I had that budget pretty much completely turned off because, hey, why not? It's unlimited, right? So what that means is that ARC, in my case, would just pile on the new differential backup. So whenever I changed something on the system, the next day, overnight, it would just bing, end up on there, and it would never delete anything from the old backups, which is convenient because you can go back a long time. The result in my case, I would think about a terabyte of stuff that I back up there. And the result is that over time, I accumulated about 5 terabytes of stuff. And I guess I'm part of that problem. Why Amazon is canceling the free backup? Because people, if it's free, then people will just keep piling stuff on. And to keep all of that after October, they are changing the pricing model from $60 or $59.90 something per terabyte per year to, no, they used to be $60 for everything per year, and now it's going to be $60 per terabyte per year. So for me, that would have raised the price of the backup price to $300 per year, and that sounds like it's a bit too much. So as I said, my base data set is about a terabyte, maybe slightly over. So what I've done to test is I've set a lower budget, and then I set the enforce budget every 30 days option. And that will tell Arc to throw away older backups faster, which means you will still have multiple backups, but they won't go as back. Don't go as far back as they used to. And then if you kind of want to enforce that right now, not wait for the 30 days to be over, up in the menu bar, not in the Arc window, but up in the system's menu bar where you have the little Arc icon, the little shield icon, there is an entry. When you click that, it says enforce budget now. And that's when it'll go to work and try to figure things out and shrink your backup size. And I tested that by setting my, I have 5 terabytes, so I set a limit to 4 terabytes for now, just to test this and to not throw away too much until October. I still have some time left. And one thing I learned, this won't be instant. It will take a while. It took days here. So if your Amazon plan is up soon, you might want to do this early just to give it time to do its work. And it does work, but it again takes some time. In the end, at this point, I think I'll probably stick with Amazon and just limit it to 2 terabytes, which is still going to double my cost. But just switching to a completely new system sounds cumbersome. And it's a hands-off system, and it works just fine for me. And with 2 terabytes of backup, I still have backups in case something happens. Anyway, the cloud backup is a last resort anyway, so I typically will not have to go back over months and months on those ones because that's what I have my local time machine backups for. So if you have a different cloud backup solution, send a quick voicemail to voice@tfttf.com and tell us what's good or bad about it. I would love to keep this discussion going for a while. And then there was this.
Hi, this is Pavlos. I am from Greece, and I love your show. I am looking for the episode called What is Sharpness? And I cannot find it anywhere. I'm really interested to listen to it. So if you could tell me how to find it, I'd really appreciate it. Keep it up, and I love your show. Bye.
Thank you, Pavlos. Yeah, that's not your fault. That's entirely my fault. Doofus Chris pressed the wrong button again. Yeah, I did it. Whatever. I did a misconfiguration, and that killed some links to older episodes. Just some, but they were broken for a while. And let's just say it's fixed. You can get to all these episodes. If you couldn't get to an older episode in the feed, try again. It should work now. And Pavlos, thank you so much for pointing this out. I probably wouldn't have found this myself, at least not as quickly. So I kind of depend on a few more eyes and ears out there to point me to issues. And thank you so much. A Tips from the Top Floor sticker is on its way to you.
Hey Chris, Steve here. I've got a response to a previous listener and a question for you. First, I'd like to respond to the gentleman who asked about securing his digital images. Like yourself, my entry into photography was analog. My typical process was to make prints of my best photos, and the negatives were put into storage. To this day, I still look at those prints, but I've never looked at those negatives again. I suppose I'm of that age where I consider a true finished photographic work to be a print, and the hard drive the digital equivalent of the negative storage box. That said, a wonderful way to add a layer of protection for one's image collection is to print them. One could argue that prints could get destroyed, but I have prints that have been handed down to me from generations past, and even after all that time, they are still 100% guaranteed against malware attacks. Secondly, I have a question for you. The Marquardt International Pinhole Camera. What happened to the project? Did you always intend for this to be a one-off? And can you direct us anywhere we may be able to see some images taken by you or your clients with the camera? Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Steve. Analog. Let us talk about the first part of the question first. Analog and the prints of your best photos. That's a backup right there. And the print is really a layer of protection. It's also the wonderful way to give your photos some haptic qualities and make them real. Take bring them out from this virtual space somewhere on your hard drive or even somewhere in the cloud and kind of make them into something that people can touch. And people have lost this a bit. I mean, I remember handing prints around, and there is something pretty magical about this. Against loss of negatives, I have heard horror stories of photographers storing their negatives in the basement and just for them to be flooded and destroyed this way. Very, very heartbreaking stories. There used to be services that made a physical copy of your negatives. You could have them copied, like there was special copy film that was made especially for that. So you could have kind of a physical offsite backup of your work. Nowadays, I think that's harder to get. But yeah, the print is, there's something about the print. Regarding the Marquardt International Pinhole, for those who don't know, that's the pinhole, large format 4x5 pinhole camera that I built together with a friend who's a furniture maker and who's an artist with wood, and with a guy who did all the metal work. And this was always planned to be kind of a fairly small scale project, and one where I could cut my teeth with making a physical product, which was a really interesting experience, and I learned a lot from that. And while the initial 10 cameras, we only made 10, while they were produced and sold, everyone a one of a kind and a different wood, and while we have the parts and hardware for a potential second production run, this, to be honest, has not been an economical project. We toyed with the idea of making the system a bit more modular and thus more affordable, but in the end, it does come down to economy with this project. And I mean, even the first one wasn't really economic. Having the metal, well, the guy who made the camera, the wood part, the boxes, he pretty much didn't charge anything for that part. It was kind of a project that we both kind of loved and poured our hearts into. But having those metal parts specially made, with all the different, they don't just appear out of nothing. There's a lot of planning, and then there's a lot of like work on a milling machine, and then there's sandblasting and surface treatment and electrical treatment, whatever, and laser engraving and stuff. Those parts, they pretty much swallowed up all of the proceeds. So while I'm awfully proud of what we've achieved, I mean, this was an amazing project. Like we have 10 very different woods, all very pristine woodwork there. The leather work for the film holder straps, the precision cut pinhole, the laser engraving, the packaging box. I mean, I look at those cameras with an enormous amount of pride, but the whole project ended up being a zero-sum game. So at this point, unfortunately, we don't have any real plans to revive it. If we wanted to make this a kind of economical, then I believe the price would probably have to be way up, and that would then result in no one buying it. So at this point, it's unfortunately not really moving forward. As for photos taken with the Marquardt International Pinhole, the owners of the camera have taken photos, and I have a few links, and I'll do my best to pull them together and put them in the show notes.
Hey Chris, this is Dave Recht in California. I got a question for you. I was listening to another podcast, photo podcast this morning. Yes, occasionally I do cheat on you. Sorry about that. But they were talking about a lens being introduced to the market, and mentioned 7 elements and 6 groups, and I've heard that terminology before, and honestly I don't know whether I want more elements or more groups or less of both of those or some combination of both. I don't know what all that means actually. So I was hoping you could give me an explanation and perhaps shed some light on the lens issue, or show me the light, or something along those lines. So anyway, thanks very much for your podcast, and hope to see you soon again, actually, too.
Hey, Dave. Thank you so much, and great to hear from you again. Of course, the bigger the numbers, the better. That's the rule in photography, right? More megapixels, more better. More lenses, more... No, of course not. The quick answer is marketing loves those numbers, but these numbers are not really meaningful for you and your photography. The long answer is a lens is built from multiple pieces of glass, multiple lens elements inside this tube, this metal tube. And the lenses have special characteristics when it comes to how they focus the light. And some of them do, for example, a standard lens will, for example, focus different parts of the spectrum at different spots. So you will have stuff out of focus, and that's what we call chromatic aberration. And there needs to be some correction. At least some lenses will do that, most of them actually. So they have correction elements in there. And those are often put together in groups. So you will have one lens with a concave side and the matching lens with a convex side, and they fit into each other, and they will glue them together. They will stick them together with a transparent optical cement, or sometimes with some lenses even with like a liquid, like an oil kind of thing. And that's how they group lenses. There are probably other ways too, but that's one of the ways to do it. So you will have an amount of individual lenses, and then some of them are kind of pulled together into these groups. And that's how they get rid of some of the optical issues with the lens. And in my book, those numbers are probably one of the least important parameters for when you're trying to decide on a lens. What it's typically about is optical performance. That's what you want from a lens, or at least most people want from a lens. And I don't think there's a real correlation between the number of pieces of glass in a lens and what those pictures then look like. Those numbers have never ever influenced any of my lens buying decisions. Actually, maybe the opposite, because, of course, more lens groups and more lens elements means more glass surfaces inside the lens. So there's a higher potential for reflections, and that will then in turn create lens flares. But again, I don't think there's a clear correlation between that, because that is, of course, then countered by the according coating on the lens. So I will decide for a lens by shooting with it and then looking at the photos, never by those numbers.
Hello Chris, this is Lucas from Vienna, Austria. Just listened to your episode 780, the Tarantino episode, where you were talking about a tool to test your memory cards, and I use a tool called H2 Test W, which was developed by the Heise Publishing house. They did this like a few years ago when this counterfeit USB drives were on the market, where like every second drive didn't have the capacity it stated. And what this tool does is basically it writes 1 gigabyte chunks of data on the drive you select, and reads this afterwards, and it knows the pattern, and so it can detect if the drive has the size it says, and if there are any memory errors or so. This is the tool I'm using because I have a Windows notebook, and I'll put the link in the email so you can check this out. Maybe this is something other readers or listeners are interested in. Keep up the good work. I like the podcast, and see you. Bye.
Thank you, Lucas. So yeah, just to recap, I use a tool on my memory cards when I buy them, and just to run, to write specific patterns on them, and then they will read back, and that gives you some information. First of all, how fast the card is, and second, well, let's say how fast the card/reader combination is, because that has an influence too. And then second, it will tell you if that card really has the capacity that it's claiming to have, because there used to be counterfeit cards, and I'm pretty sure there still are at least a few out there. So on the Mac, I use the command line tool called F3. I'm going to link to that in the show notes. And then, thanks, Lucas, there's H2 Test W. That's one word, H, the number 2, Test W, and that's for Windows. And it does pretty much the same thing. It has I think it's made here in Germany. So when you go to the website, I think it has a German interface, but I think if you run it on a system that is set to English, it will switch to an English interface. So you should be just fine using it on your Windows system. And that was it. Hey, that was it for today. Thanks to all of you who sent in a question. Pavlos, Steve, Dave, and Lucas, and everyone else. If you want to send in your question or your input or anything you think might be a good fit for the show, record it in the voice memo app on your smartphone and send it to voice@tfttf.com. That's voice@tfttf.com. And hey, no question is too small to be asked here on the show. Just send it in. And of course, also thank you if you left an iTunes rating or a review. And of course, thank you all the wonderful Patreon supporters. Ratings on iTunes help the community grow, and your support on Patreon helps me pay the bills. You're all amazing people. Thank you. Music for the show by Jeff Smith, silent partner Hans-Peter Kagerud, publishing by Release Pixie Matt, Revsitor Armstead, Slack Imitations by CIO Russ. Yep, the Slack is a thing. Tips from the top floor Slack for free. All the amazing Slackers in there talking about all sorts of topics. If you want to find out more, go to tfttf.com/yslack, WHYSLACK. My name is Chris Marquardt. Follow me on Facebook and on Twitter at Chris Marquardt, Chris MARQUARDT. And of course, go out and take amazing photos. Be nice to each other. And happy shooting.